All right, I am here with Shagun Singh. Thank you very much for coming. You are a UX researcher, a writer on Substack, publications Science of Art, researcher, and you are a public artist um, who has done uh, enormous public art projects, and many of them, uh, some of which we will talk about. But
Mhm.
your topic is how to not be a starving artist, which I think I coined, but we it was a back and forth, and it's really what you write about a lot. And I think it makes sense that it's what you write about because the art that you make is so singular. Um, I can't imagine, and each piece is so different
Mhm.
that it must be a very difficult career to find sustainability. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah. It's as you said, like, so my business is Urban Matter. I develop large scale interactive installations for cities, for government clients, for nonprofits. Um, and it has been a very hard business to run. Even though the commissions tend to be really big, and extremely fulfilling. But financially, if I was to do the math, the amount of time it takes for a project to get over could be anywhere between, a year to 3 years. And that doesn't really account for the amount of admin work, or a lot of times, they'll include the budget for materials and just the amount of time that it, takes to get your head wrapped around these really complex projects. So I have had to find ways and means of creating a kind of a little bento box, one could say, of different projects that sustain me at different times. So I'm really close to this work that I do through Urban Matter because it's public art, it's self-expression, it's creating these like really beautiful pieces for the city, but I don't want to give that up, and I want to support that. It brings me great joy. It's self expression. I have a lot of control over those projects. So I have to make like a certain kind of compromises elsewhere. And that's what I write about. Like, how do people like me and just creative people who don't just have this one thing that engages them, how do they make a sustainable career?
I've forgotten the 20-minute timer, so you have a few extra minutes.
Oh,
Um,
yay.
I can't encourage people enough to look at urbanmatterinc.com, I think is what it is.
Mhm. Yeah.
And the projects are I can't really describe them because they're so fascinating and like enormous. But just to give people like a sense of some of them, uh, one was like an empty storefront that lets strangers play ping pong with one another using their phones as paddles in Brooklyn. Uh, you made a pop-up confessional booth in 2016 that used AI.
How crazy is that?
I know that's wildly ahead of its time.
Yeah.
And that I guess went around Brooklyn, and you could talk to an AI priest through this confessional booth. I mean, these are so fascinating. Air Bear is another really interesting one where I guess was like a electronic device that people could interact with, and you
Hmm.
could basically see ways, basically gamify ways to deal with air pollution.
Yeah, it visualized air pollution. So you could play like it had a pop quiz where you could actually look at the air pollution and pop the dots, and it would come up with questions and stuff to create awareness around air pollution. And it was, a really fun interface. And that project was again like funded by a nonprofit. It was kind of initiated by Creative Commons. But again, like these projects are kind of few and far in between. A lot of them use technologies that are like kind of future facing. So like 10 years ago, we were talking about AI, and now it's everywhere. So my work is very futuristic, but that doesn't like make it, it doesn't make it sustainable because it's still art, right? I'm not building a startup. I'm still like looking for self-expression. So at that time, I think we were like, me and my partners, I was working with a technologist and industrial designer, and we were like, I am a designer too, and we were doing other work. So I was picking up the freelance work, and so were others. And now the way my career has spanned is that I want to spend more time doing the things that I love, which is creating more art, um, kind of making participatory workshops so that others could make such art as well. So work with the community, etc. And I'm like trying to think about how do I make that happen without doing this freelance work, um, and doing more things that I care about, you know? So is there a way to like kind of think about myself as a person who is not just a UX designer with, you know, a passion for public artists, but like be an artist? And that's been my kind of struggle. And I have come to, like a lot of times I've come to a standstill and been like, oh God, like I am neither. I'm not like climbing the corporate ladder in tech. And then I am not like this famous public artist either. So who am I? And that has kind of propelled my writing. And I've been looking at like what are the alternate models people use to enhance their careers, you know? And there are superstars in the art economy, but they like in film as well. But they're just as many like Spielbergs. They are like a very, very small fraction of this whole like creative economy. But the rest of us, we still want to make art as art. You know, we don't want to make consumerist art. Um, and so is there a place for us? And that's like the main question that I'm trying to answer through my Substack.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I crossed your Substack because I'm really asking the same questions within the realm of film. And there's a whole community asking that. But the more I've been digging, the more I'm realizing it's not just filmmakers, it's musicians are going through the same thing. Uh, Writers through publishing are going through the same thing. There's really, whatever the creator economy, whether that's ultimately a good thing and putting democratizing art and bringing new new areas for artists to emerge and enter. It's hard to say, but right now it's certainly a struggle, and it's we've perhaps hit a tipping point. But I think what you're doing is so unique, and really a pit like if you can find sustainability in public art, and not just public art, but like every project is so different. Um, I guess on one hand, I'm curious as to like how you navigate that by being like true to the artist in you. I imagine like you're very much at the mercy of, whoever is funding your project. How do you navigate that? I guess
Right.
good way to start. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Like how am I funding these projects? And a lot of it is about, and I write about this, is about applications. Like, of course, we're all like applying for grants all the time, applying for public art commissions all the time, and it's hard. You know, there are when I get rejection letters, it's like, oh, we had 200 and like 50, 80, 281. That's the recent one I got was like, and you know, your work was great, but not good enough, I guess, you know, in their own words. So I'm getting to a point I'm like, okay, like there is like this structure where like, do I want my work to be, and was spending 60% of my time just doing that. And on weeks like even 80%, I'm like, do I want to do that? Like, is being an artist all about permission? Like, is it about putting your work on Etsy and just like waiting for people to buy it? Or like, in my case, applying for these grants and applying for these commissions and just like waiting for someone to pick me. So the framework that I'm looking at right now is like talks about the idea of effectuation, which is something that was coined by this, I think, social scientist called Saraswati. And it is around the idea that as artists and creatives, we think creatively about living, you know.
Yeah.
There's a certain way our brains are wired. So like we can look around and see what we have and like build something with it. So it's not about like having a plan that, oh my God, I need to be this person and show my work at, Madison Square Garden, even though like I have kind of done that in my own way. But for me, it's like, what do I have at my disposal right now? And what I am doing right now is I do very large scale work, but I'm kind of sort of bringing down the scale and trying to make indoor pieces. So that's something that like I started thinking about. I'm like, okay, I have this ability to do this. Indoor pieces, like something which is like a wall art would be smaller scale. I have a friend who wants to do like an informal opening for me. I have a local grant making organization where I live because it's just a really small village. So even though I'm so close to New York City, I've done projects there. I'm like, it's a black hole. Like for me, I could do that like every single day, but then I also have these other things at my disposal and I can have more control over them. So it kind of sort of is this framework where you're thinking about number one, who you are as a person, like what gives you energy. The funny thing is like public art hasn't been the most like it isn't doesn't the margins are not great, like it's not this one product that I'm replicating and creating in China. Like it's
Yeah.
people doing all this work. So but it gives me so much energy and it makes me so happy to see these pieces come to, like it's like birthing a child every time. And it's hard, but so I don't want to give it up. Like I have spoken to my brother-in-law, who is actually a serial entrepreneur, and he doesn't get it. He's like, "Why are you killing yourself? You're not making any money." But I'm like, "This drives me. It's different from like selling washing machines, right?" So,
Well,
um, go ahead.
I think you are doing the really hard work of trying to talk the language of entrepreneurs or business minded people uh, from an I mean it's literally this science of art, which is the title of your publication. But I mean you really are trying to objectify uh, um, the strengths of an artist. And like one of the things you wrote that I really like is that you started to look at creativity as a strategic asset and not a liability. Um,
Absolutely. I mean, my brain works differently, and I'm sure yours does too, than my brother-in-law's, who actually like bought asbestos company. So I'm like,
yeah.
he's clearly looking at this is a need in the world, and I have to look at like this is my need. I need this to talk about my life, my dreams, and that the community is able to like look at my work and be inspired. Like children want to have careers as artists, so that all that is really important. And most of my work is in like underused uh, communities which are not really exposed to art, number one, and the spaces are underutilized. Like no one would want to, like Nick Cave wouldn't want to go and put art there. They'd be like, oh, it's not interesting enough. I'm going to go to like Miami Basel and put something there. So it's different. And if I won't do it, no one else will. And this drives me. But so how do I keep this? So my identity is that this gives me energy. I love it. I'm going to keep it. So, but then I need this other side of it, which is like financially supporting it. Like, how do I make that happen? Like, of course, it's not a totally lost cause. I do make money off of it. But then I'm thinking about other ways of writing about it, sharing it, um, teaching, ways and means of creating interesting community driven art. now I'm doing these wall art pieces which are smaller in size, and I'm doing these small experiments to see like what can really, things that I'm able to monetize and things that can like financially sustain me.
Yeah.
So there are ways that we can creatively think about it, number one. And number two is really looking at failure as data, right? Like I'm thinking about this experiment that I'm doing with like small scale art now. I literally have this framework where I'm like, I'm showing it here. These are the people who are going to be there. This is how I'm going to price my art. And let's see if I'm able to kind of, and then also doing the little cost benefit analysis where I'm like, okay, this is the time I'm spending on it, this is the material, and I need to make this much. And if that doesn't happen, then I can look at that as data because I write this about affordable loss versus guaranteed success, right? Like I know nothing is guaranteed, but can I take this loss? In my case, I can right now.
But you also, one thing that I really like that you write about that I think encourages that type of thinking, or at least helps artists embrace that type of thinking, is that you talk about risk seeking, or that you say artists are risk seeking and not reckless. Uh,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you go so far, and I think this could like really applies to at least like the non-D film community. Um, if we embrace ourselves as we have to take risks as it's inherent to our occupation
Mm-hmm.
to an extent. And a lot of what you write about is sort of community driven sustainability for artists. You brought up something that I hadn't really thought about, which is like share community, like shared risk. I forget the exact words you used, but basically taking on risk as a community. Uh, is
Because it, no, that makes, yeah, I talked about it not only from a perspective of like artists sharing that risk, like
yeah,
renting a space together or renting or creating a bookshop together. And this is something that I'm talking to another artist about, like getting a laser cutter together or having a space for prototyping together, because it, not only are you splitting the costs, but there is also a kind of a networking effect that comes with it. Like there is work that gets kind of, thrown out there, or they are people that you attract, their communities that you support. And in my case, like being in the small village, like a friend is throwing me a opening, like she at her own expense. Like she is, I would say, not a collector, but a patron. And this is something that I like kind of look, having home as a gallery space is something that I learned from another artist I interviewed. And she would Pan Smilo, and she would go around like the Bay Area and people would host her, and she would just show her work to people's friends, and she would roll out her paintings, and people would buy stuff like that. So it was like a traveling salesman kind of a thing, just being an artist, which I found really interesting. And I'm like, it's just trust. Like I don't see another like business person doing that, but it is such a novel way to think about things, and that just comes from having a creative artistic mindset, I feel.
and being able to build that network from that. Uh,
Yeah, having that trust-based network. Like if I was selling insurance, I mean, I don't know if I would have been able to make that happen because it's not like interesting enough, or it's not, I don't know, it doesn't move people, even though it's a requirement. And I feel like artists are on the forefront of all the kind of technical or technological innovations that are happening as well, like Instagram and TikTok. And of course there's a dark side to all of that. And that's why I like emphasize and keep coming back to like artist collectives and artist co-ops. I
yeah.
think the most important thing there is the financial safety net, because uh, money is the top priority in our career or in our profession. And if you're able to take pool your pool your assets and be able to invest in art and artists, so not just be an artist but also be a patron, a collector, a curator, um, and have this community of like supporting other artists, you could make money off of that too and have that goodwill because you could have equity. And we were talking about DAOs, decentralized frameworks. You could have equity in an artist, you could have equity in their work. So if they're able to sell their work forward, you make money. So it's a really interesting way of looking at the creative economy or looking at sustainable art. Um,
Yeah, I think how not to be a starving artist was an appropriate topic title because it is moving away from that notion of like the starving artist alone and
yeah,
creating these new, community oriented um, models, which we only have a couple minutes left. I know it goes quickly, but you've written about a bunch of different models. Um, is there like one or two that are really like speaking to you that feel very relevant? If I were to sway it into the film community direction, is there anything that you think we ought to be paying attention to?
I think uh, as I mentioned before, I thought the DAO was interesting,
Yeah.
and we talked about it. It's essentially just having like a decentralized governance framework where people are able to pitch in their projects, and the group is able to act as curators and um, kind of come up with like this one project that they want to support. And once they put their support behind it, they're able to raise money for it. And if the film does really well, then everyone has a stake in it. So it is about like trust and governance and supporting, having a supportive system. And, you don't, I know there's this whole thing about meeting like one to one, but it's essentially being decentralized. Like I could be here and I could have someone in India who's supporting my project. And it could be small, it could be tight, and the nice thing about it is like the financial aspect that's tied to it. And I know DAO gets like kind of connected to NFTs and speculation, but this is a very different use of it.
Yeah.
And and I really think like all kinds of creative community, especially film and visual artists, could really benefit from it.
Well, one of the nice things you said is that like the hype around blockchain, crypto, like these sorts of terms that I think can get misconstrued, like the hype has passed. And so, I mean, I think you literally like say that, and you say the tools are now clear. We can actually see
Right.
the tools past the hype. And it seems like there is an actual utility to these, and it comes very much in what you're saying. It can create I think more than anything, it seems like the value is a shared risk. We can
It's a
take
shared
risk
risk.
together.
Exactly. It's like an investment pool, and you're investing not in like crypto, but you're investing in a piece of art, a piece of culture, a film. And that's what makes it different and that's what makes it special. And I think it's a really great tool to make that happen. And I feel this is only going to happen in the creative, in the art world, because we think differently.
Well, that was our 20 minutes. So thank you so much. I
Thank
I
you.
think this is hugely helpful, and I hope the film community pays attention because I think you're speaking to artists of all mediums. So thank
Yeah,
you.
I hope so too. That's my intent. But thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.